is Kevin Winters, and we're in a series talking about the voice of God, how to hear it and how to discern it. And I say this in the beginning of every video, and I said I will continue to say it because it's more important to me every day. Y'all know we realize that it's very important that if you want to know what God is saying and be confident about what God is saying to you, and not move in some type of an error or be afraid of moving in error, then you need to understand what God has said to you. And you know what he said because he gives us this. I've explained several times. I got so comfortable hearing the voice of God that I didn't read like I was supposed to. And so as my reading decreased, so did my encounters with God. And so when I finally reached out to God and said, hey, what's going on with why aren't you speaking? He told me turn my Bible to the side and showed me that the pages were the tongues and the covers were his lips. And he said, anytime you want to hear me speak, open it up. And so he stressed to me the value of speaking, of reading his word. And so if you want to hear his voice, y'all, you have to take the reading of his word serious, not just the reading, the studying. And I've said in a few videos, giving y'all keys of ways that you can study and know that this is God that you're talking to, because you're looking for the personality and attitude in the scriptures. And I've said this before, the relationship with God is no different, y'all, than the developing a relationship with any other person. Number one, it takes time, so don't expect that right away you're going to hear his voice and never going to miss it again. It takes time to learn a person. It takes time to learn a person's ways. But you can read your Bible and God will show you all kinds of things about himself that allow you to know who he is. The same way you would go out with a friend several times before you would become comfortable with their voice. The first time they call you on the phone, you say, who is this? And they say, oh, this is so-and-so you met me the other day. Now, after you have developed some type of relationship with that, you don't have that problem again. And it's the same way with God. As you develop in understanding this, you're going to become more confident in hearing the voice. And the things that you hear will be deeper, and things that God requires you to do will be greater. And I'm going to tell you that because you know more. And he's teaching you more about himself. He'll have the expectation that you will recognize him when he speaks to you. Now, today I want to deal with the subject of expectation. And I'm trying to follow God here, y'all. This is going to be one of those moments where he's going to speak and I'm going to listen and I'm going to say what he's saying, because I'm going to deal with expectation. And this is interesting because the way I wrote expectation up in my book, I was going to go that way. But God has taken me in another way, and he's showing me different things this morning. And so stay with me. You'll see me making turns and maneuvering with God as I listen, as he navigates me through what he's trying to communicate with expectation. And I'm going to try to stay out of his way and let him do what he wants to do. But turn to 1 Samuel 3. I had it here before I messed up my pages. 1 Samuel 3, 1, and I'm going to read down through 10. Now the boy Samuel ministered to the Lord before Eli, and the words of the Lord was rare in those days. There was no widespread revelation, and it came to pass at that time, while Eli was lying down in his place, and when his eyes had began to grow so dim that he could not see, and before the lamp of God went out in the tabernacle of the Lord, where the ark of God was, and while Samuel was lying down, that the Lord called Samuel, and he answered him, here I am. So he ran to Eli and said, here I am, for you called me. And he said, I did not call. Lie down again. And he went and lay down. Then the Lord called yet again Samuel. So Samuel arose and went to Eli and said, here I am, for you called me. He answered, I did not call, my son, lie down again. Now Samuel did not yet know the Lord, nor was the word of the Lord yet revealed to him. And the Lord called to Samuel again and the third time. So he arose and went to Eli and said, here I am, for you did call me. Then Eli perceived that the Lord had called the boy. Therefore Eli said to Samuel, go and lie down, and it shall be, if he calls you, that you must say, speak, Lord, for your servant hears. So Samuel went and lay down in his place. Now the Lord came and stood and called as at other times, Samuel, Samuel. And Samuel answered, Speak, for your servant hears. Now, I want us to look at a few things here, as I feel led, of course. This is a story where Samuel the prophet, at this time he's just a young boy, and he's not even a prophet, but he's getting a call from God. So Eli has laid down the lamp, the lights have been turned down, and both of them are lying down on their bed. Both of them are lying down on their bed, and Samuel begins to hear a voice. And it says Samuel. Now Samuel thinks that it's Eli's voice, and so he runs to Eli. Eli says, I didn't call you. Go lie down again. He hears a voice a second time and goes see Eli. Eli says, I didn't call you. Go lie down again. Then Eli finally realizes, hey, God is calling him. And so he says to him the third time he comes, you must, when he comes again, I want you to say, speak, Lord, your servant hears. Now, my subject is expectation, right? Because we're dealing with hearing the voice of God. And there are a few things I want to look at in this passage. First of all, I want you to see that, remember I talked to you about stillness? Stillness is in this passage. Wherever you see stillness, y'all, you're likely to see expectation. And this is because when you are still, God speaks. Now, I want to show you that because we went through stillness, and I want you to see where stillness is applied in the scriptures. It says, when did God speak to Samuel? It was when he lay down. So watch. And verse 3. And before the lamp of God went out in the tabernacle of the Lord, where the ark of God was, and while Samuel was lying down, while Samuel was still, while Samuel was resting, while Samuel was not in a position of depending on himself, while his mind was quiet, he heard a voice calling his name. And so he got up. And so stillness is very important in us learning how to hear God's voice. Now I can show it to you again here in Numbers, and we're going to get back to expectation, but I need you to see stillness. Numbers 9:8 says, and Moses said to them, stand still, that I might hear what the Lord will command concerning you. Now I want you to notice that before he said, I'm going to hear, there has to be a position, y'all, of stillness. I need you to be still. In other words, I don't want you to make any decisions. I don't want you to decide for yourself. I don't want you to go get a new job because the people on the job are getting on your nerve. I want you to stand still and let me tell you where the next job is. I want you to stand still and understand that I am going to give you heaven's plan. But if you're going to hear me, you first have to stand still. So there is standing still. And you see this with Samuel here in the passage, that God spoke when he was still, right? And he spoke each time when he was still. When he got up and started walking and he went to talk to Eli, he didn't hear a voice, did he? He heard the voice every time he lay down. And when he went to lay down again, he heard it again. And so it's when you're still that you are going to be most likely to hear the voice of God clearly. Now, and stillness is important because when we went through stillness, but now I want to actually show you that not only is there stillness, but stillness must be coupled with expectation. Because just because he was still and he heard from God doesn't mean that he expected to hear from God. And because he didn't expect to hear from God, he did not know that it was God calling him. And so this happens to a lot of people. This happens to all of us. This happens to everyone. Because the Bible says this first about it. It says there was no widespread revelation. So God was speaking, but there was just nobody to listen. And so it wasn't a lot of preachers, wasn't a lot of truth. It was a lot of prophets. God has never had a problem with a shortage of prophets. He's always, and to this day, still has a problem with those who are willing to speak his word and not their word. And so that's the problem. But so there is an expectation, and he experiences God while he's lying down. But I'm trying to get to my place here. Because it says, it's verse 7. Now Samuel did not yet know the Lord, nor was the word of the Lord yet revealed to him. So he didn't know. He was working in the church. He was doing work in the church. He was serving in the church, singing in the choir, working on the usher board, preaching in the church. He was serving in the church, but he had never heard the voice of God. He didn't even know. And this is a problem. Sometimes people can't hear the voice of God because nobody told you that you should hear the voice of God. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to tell you that you can hear the voice of God. And I'm trying to open up your expectation so that when he calls, you will hear him. Because some of y'all hear him calling just like Eli, but you run somewhere else. He's calling you to do something else, and you run to this person. You did call me. You did call me. And he's trying to help you understand that's not him calling you, that's me calling you. But the reason that a lot of people don't recognize, just like Samuel didn't recognize the voice of God calling him, is because he had not been taught by anybody that he should expect to hear from God. And so he thought it was Eli. So then it becomes absolutely important to you to see the value of having somebody. And this is why hopefully y'all will pass this truth on. And it doesn't have to be me passing this truth on. You're going to know this now, and I can show it to you. I'm showing it to you so you can show it to others, right? Each one teach one. I believe in giving what I've been freely given, what I've freely received. I'm trying to share with you what's been shared with me. And by doing that, I want you to share with others that they can hear the voice of God, and you can show this passage is clear that the only reason that Samuel didn't recognize the voice of God is because he was not expecting to hear from God. But the moment that he had an instructor, the moment that he had somebody say, hey, the next time he calls you, that's God. The next time he calls you, just say, speak, Lord, your servant hears. So he identifies that this God, he says, speak, Lord. He identifies for the young boy who's speaking to him and opens up his expectation. Once his expectation is open, he hears God the next time. And you'll see down in verse 10, God, the Lord came and stood and called as at other times, Samuel, Samuel. And Samuel answered, speak, Lord, your servant hears. Then the Lord said to Samuel. So you'll see in verse 11, it starts with the Lord spoke with what God said to him. But he was able to hear him. He was able to hear or recognize him only after he was expecting to hear. So you have to have stillness and expectation, y'all. Some people are still, and so you go to sleep at night and you have dreams, but you get up and say, oh, I just had some crazy dream last night. Or you're walking around and you have an image pop into your mind and you say, ooh, that was weird. My imagination is playing tricks on me. And then you just keep going about your business. Or you hear a subtle voice saying to you, don't go that way. Don't go that way. But you don't know that that's God because nobody's told you. Nobody's told you to expect to hear from him. And it's the same way, like we said in Job 33. The Lord speaks this way and that way, and man does not perceive it in a dream of the night. So he's always speaking, but we're not always perceptive. And when we're not perceptive of his voice, it's usually because we're not expecting to hear. And so when you get up in the morning, y'all, you should be in a position. Not only do you have to learn how to be still before God, but you got to come to him with the expectation that he's going to speak. Like I showed you in Numbers 8, Moses says, stand still that I might hear what he's going to say. He said, and he's saying that because I'm being still because I'm expecting to hear. So I'm not still for the sake of being still, but I'm still because I'm expecting to hear from God. And we can have that expectation of God because Jeremiah 33:3 says, call to me and I will answer. So he tells you, if you call me, I will answer and show you great and mighty things. So that means show. Either he's going to tell you, or either you're going to have visions or dreams. But if you call, he will show you, or he might speak by his word, or he might speak any number of ways. But you have to have that expectation of looking for God to speak. Please understand that. So you can see that God spoke to him when he was still. God spoke to him 3 times when he was still. When he laid down, he was still. He didn't hear the first 2 times because he wasn't expecting, and nobody had taught him that he should be expecting. So the 3rd time or the 4th time God called, then he heard, and he heard because his expectation. Somebody told him that he should expect to hear, and then he expected to hear. And expectation opened him up to hear the voice of God. And then him and God went on to have one of the most fruitful relationships in all of scriptures.